This is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I really loved Henry Cavill's Superman. And according to the internet, if you love Man of Steel, then there is no way you will like the new Superman movie. And if you like the new Superman movie, you must hate Henry Cavill's Man of Steel. I mean, sure, Man of Steel wasn't appreciated by the critics with a 57% rating, but I really thought Zack Snyder managed to create a unique Superman that is completely different from the previous Superman we have had. But then something bad happened to the DCEU that led us to the new Superman movie. The DCEU movie started flopping hard at the box office. Every DCEU movie that was coming out had a lower box office than the previous film that DCEU had released. They were struggling to hit the 400 million mark. We needed a new Superman and a new cinematic universe because the previous version wasn't working box office wise. That being said, we now have a new Superman, and that is David Corenswet, and that is the start of a brand new DC cinematic universe. And before I tell you if David Corenswet works as the new DCU Superman, it seems that Snyder fans have gone mentally insane. Even James Gunn noticed, and guys, I can't believe I'm saying this, but just read this Reddit post. Post spoilers everywhere, leave a bad rating, and the most insane thing, look at this last line. Gunn fired the last shot and killed the Snyderverse, and here is our chance to take the fight back to him. Like, this is genuine insane behavior. But do you know what actually killed the Snyderverse? Not James Gunn. He was first hired to write a Superman movie even before he was the CEO of DC Studios. It is declining box office that killed the Snyderverse. And don't even get me started on this cult for some reason saying that people who like this new Superman movie must be paid shills. And guys, you know what's the funniest part of all this is? Even if somehow this new Superman movie fails, by the way, which it won't, the box office numbers have now come out and they look really good. The actual chance of Snyderverse being revived goes from an astounding 1% back to 0%, because why would you want to go back to something that's already failed? But I'm done with this BS. So the new Superman movie, how was it? Was it a masterpiece? No, I had 3 problems with it, which I'm going to explain because it might be a bit controversial. And before I even dive into how David Corenswet holds up as our new Superman, I want to talk about the best part about this movie, and that is the castings. Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane? Perfect. She manages to perfectly portray as the intelligent, hard-hitting, no BS reporter. But this brings me to the first problem I had with this movie, and that is the relationship between Lois Lane and Clark Kent. Unfortunately, this movie does not have a lot of scenes of David being just Clark Kent. We do get a lot of Superman scenes, and for some people that might be good, but this movie also had another job, and that was trying to establish a stable relationship between Lois and Clark. The thing that would have sold me more on Clark and Lois was I just wish there were more scenes of Lois and Clark just working at the Daily Planet. That could have really shown that these two people genuinely are in love with each other, but instead we got one major scene, and that is them of arguing. I mean, there is a second scene of him talking to Lois after he finds out that his parents sent him here to kill everyone, but personally I think that's more Superman than Clark Kent. That's just a personal desire of mine that I wish we got to see more of David Corenswet as Clark Kent. But there is one person we got to see, Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, and that guy really nailed Lex Luthor. He genuinely convinced me that that guy hates Superman. And you know what? This is going to be a controversial take. Do you guys remember when the report came out that James Gunn has deleted a scene of Ultraman punching Krypto? I was afraid that they were going to pull punches and showing evil characters doing evil things. But I'm happy to tell you there are several holy moments in this movie. I genuinely can't believe that they went that far with Lex. However, I do have one nitpick with Lex, and that is how the movie ended. I just thought the movie's ending with Lex could have been a bit stronger rather than him being reduced to a joke for Krypto. I will talk about the humor part of this movie later, but I think a stronger ending for this movie could have been something like, for example, in this movie it is revealed that the DCU Earth no longer has kryptonite, but maybe, and just maybe, Lex could have saved a tiny bit of kryptonite just for himself, and maybe used that kryptonite in case of an emergency, like the ending scene with Lex and Superman. It was a comedy quip, but I wish Lex was a bit more serious in the ending. But let's talk about literally everyone's favorite part of this film, and sadly this part is so good that it managed to create a problem for its own, and that is the Justice Gang. Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner may be the best casting in this movie, as his Green Lantern was just a perfect take. Perhaps maybe the real MVP of this movie was Mr. Terrific. His fight scenes, especially the one with Lois Lane, was such a blast, but the one member of the Justice Gang who I wish we got to see more of was Hawkgirl. Isabela Merced does a great job as Hawkgirl, there's no doubt about that, but she doesn't serve a major purpose in the movie other than killing a president. Overall, the Justice Gang does a great job, but I wish we got to explore more about these characters and know more about them, rather than just seeing some cool action scenes. But given the runtime of this movie, not much could have been done. And speaking of the runtime, now let's get to problem number 3 I had with this movie, and that is the pacing of certain scenes. Now this film is 2 hours long, we all know that, and the pace of this movie is quick. And I have to say, unfortunately, unfortunately a bit too quick. There's some emotional beats in this film, like Clark Kent visiting his parents' farm, which I have to say had a perfect pacing and no comedy quips which could have ruined the scene completely. However, when it comes to Superman finding out his parents sent him to conquer the planet, and more specifically him talking to Lois about it, I think the heavy emotional part of this scene goes by a bit too quickly, with him mentioning Krypto being a bad dog, rather than him focusing on the emotional toll of him just learning that his whole purpose of Superman has been a lie. For him being sent as a conqueror but not a protector. I know comic book movies, especially MCU, have these constant comedy quips, and while this movie doesn't have constant comedy quips, I think they just have more out of place comedy quips, and maybe we could have found a better placement for it and let an emotional scene go on for a bit more long. But now let's talk about the most important part about this movie and what everyone wants to know, and that is David Corenswet. This guy, man, I have to say, he perfectly embodies a Superman who is full of joy. There is this one line in this movie said by Lois Lane that perfectly sums up David Corenswet's Superman, and that is, "You think everything and everyone is beautiful." That line is really shown throughout this film, as Superman is literally trying to save everyone. He completely matches the vibe of All-Star Superman, which, did you know, by the way, was the main influence of this movie according to director James Gunn. By now, you know I have quite a lot of nitpicks, but this one tiny nitpick I have with this Superman is kind of an ironic thing that usually Superman has the opposite of this problem, and that is that he's usually too strong. Like, Superman's supposed to be OP, right? But I think this version of Superman, maybe I'm mistaken, I need to rewatch this movie again, is peak, but I don't think he wins a single fight on his own. I think the one fight he did win on his own was against Planet Watch, but that in itself could be a message that even Superman needs help from time to time. But I was just hoping for this one fight that Superman wins on his own was the fight against Ultraman, because even in that fight he needed an assist from Krypto. Now I'm gonna spit a controversial take that might get me some hate in the comments, but I don't think this Superman could take on a General Zod right now, especially considering Henry Cavill Superman fought Zod on day 1 as Superman versus David Corenswet Superman, who is on his 3rd year right now. Now that doesn't have anything to do with whether the movie is good or not, this is just all semantics, but I was just hoping for the final fight of Superman with Ultraman, Superman can win on his own. Now there is going to be this one thing that is going to be inevitable about this movie, and that is people comparing Henry Cavill Superman with David Corenswet Superman. Some people are going to say David was better as Superman, and some people say they enjoyed Henry Cavill Superman. While it's okay to prefer one over the other, I think it's important to note that two legends can coexist at the same time. Henry Cavill Superman is vastly different from David Corenswet Superman. Our new Superman is much more joyful. David's Clark Kent, from what we can presume, was brought up in a much more joyful environment, and it's in a world, if you can remember from the opening of this movie, it's in a world where metahumans already exist, whereas Henry Cavill Superman was facing the constant obstacle of feeling like he didn't fit in this world and was constantly being undermined and rejected as an alien living on Earth. So obviously that guy is going to be a bit more brooding than someone who's already accepted. While this movie isn't a masterpiece, maybe one day Superman will get a masterpiece movie like Spider-Man, Batman, or even Wolverine have, this film is still amazing. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. The overall critic rating shows that people are loving it. And you know what, people? I think we should be happy to know that DCU has finally started on the road to a fully fledged cinematic universe that is hopefully critically acclaimed with the upcoming Supergirl and Batman movie. But the most important thing, that it has a healthy box office return similar to what MCU has. I loved Man of Steel, and I also really enjoyed this new Superman movie. You don't need to choose one over the other. These are two different interpretations, and while I did enjoy Henry Cavill Superman, unfortunately DCU had been completely abandoned by the audience, as the box office numbers indicated, and the new Superman movie has finally given us hope that DC can finally have a working cinematic universe.